So I finished Unearthly, which is the first book in a young adult angel series by Cynthia Hand, and it was actually pretty good. As I mentioned previously, I have read two other YA angel series, and that was Fallen, which was okay in my opinion, and then Hush Hush, which I actually have not been able to finish despite the fact I read book one probably about 10 years ago, if not longer. It took me forever to get to book two, and book two I was just kind of like, yep, nope, I'm done with this. I may eventually try and get back into it and do a video here, but back to Unearthly. Like I said, this was much better than those, and I felt like the whole plot kind of seemed to make a lot more sense in the whole thing with angels. That, every angel would have a purpose, and every angel blood would have a purpose. And I also like the fact that even though, again, this one does have a love triangle, it didn't really feel forced because, again, the whole thing with Clara having a purpose, her whole purpose was to save Christian. I don't necessarily understand why that would mean that she couldn't have a relationship with Tucker, but as you see more and more of her vision and see that she does have an attraction to Christian in this vision, it does kind of make sense that, there is this kind of love triangle because part of it is to do with her purpose. And I felt like this one had a lot more action. You have a lot of different things that are happening. You have a lot of different mythology coming in, and it all comes together, I feel like, pretty well. There were some things that were a little, this is definitely YA, like the fact of Clara and Tucker going out, and, they have their month anniversary, and then when they break up, Clara's absolutely devastated and just kind of mopes around for 3 days. But I will say, at least that 3 days, I feel like that's maybe a little more realistic in this book than in other ones, such as Twilight. And yes, I know Bella and Edward were together a lot longer, but I also feel like she moped a lot longer. But anyways, the whole reason I feel like it's a little more realistic for Clara to be moping for 3 days, even though it's only been a month, is because this is summer vacation, so she doesn't have school to distract her, and her friends are all basically gone for the summer. Christian's in New York, then you have Angela, who is in Italy, and then you have Wendy, who is, I believe, in Idaho, but she's doing an internship to be a vet. And that was another thing I did really like about this book, is I felt like there was a lot of concentration on the future and on what comes next versus the romance kind of being everything. Even though there for a little bit in the middle, you did get the whole Clara Tucker thing, but until they broke up, it was still kind of, again, it's summer vacation, So you're not necessarily going to be thinking a whole lot at the beginning of summer vacation for the next year of high school and in the future. And with Clara being an angel blood and having her purpose as well, it was kind of like, okay. So all in all, I did pretty much enjoy this book. And so far, I found it interesting as well that in doing this Lady Janies inspired readathon, you have both the Jody Meadows books I read. The main character kept a journal. And now in Cynthia Hand's series, Clara keeps a journal. Which again, this does make a lot of sense in the context of the story. She keeps this journal to write down what she has learned about being an angel blood, and when she starts getting the vision of her purpose, she writes it down, and then later on she keeps writing down. She writes down every time she has the vision, what she's doing, what time it is, what day it is, and the exact vision, so that she can kind of see that now there's differences. But it also makes sense because she has to put this together to figure out what her purpose is. She doesn't get 100% of the picture, but she gets enough to put it together. But the whole reason I find that interesting is that when I read the Lady Janies series, none of those characters keep a journal. And I just find it interesting that 2 out of the 3 authors of that book have their characters keep a journal, but in Lady Janies, none of them do. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and start on book 2, and I will report back to you on. So I finished book 2 now, and well, it was still okay, and it had some interesting lore and all. I did feel like there was just way too much teen drama, and it really took away from the angel plot. Like, Clara's mom is dying, and you do find out, okay, you're an angel blood, you live 100, 120, 125, I don't remember which it is, years. And she's slowly losing her strength and everything. Clara's going through it, which I completely understand. And then you have Tucker and Christian, who are getting into fistfights and stuff over her. And yeah, I just felt like it was way too overdramatic on that part. And Mom's death was really underplayed. And yeah, I did not particularly care for that. I will say that so far, this has been a pretty quick read for the series. It's taken me maybe a week for each book, and this is a week when I'm working, so it's not like I have time to really sit and read for how I normally do on weekends. And I do feel like the whole purpose thing is still sufficiently vague that I'm interested to know, like, okay, what the heck is happening? And, we have now the tree player, who are 3/4 angel in here, and you learn that they basically have a lot of powers, and, that kind of goes into the special, I'm a special person, but I do feel like Clara doesn't really pull that card a whole lot. She's not arrogant about it. And I'm definitely also interested to see what exactly is going on with everything, with her brother's purpose having been to start the fire, and then he was supposed to save Tucker. And I feel like a lot of the drama from the last book and this book could have been avoided if he had spoken up and been like, hey, I'm going to be the one to set the fire. I'm going to save Tucker. Like, he knows she loves Tucker. And he could have avoided so much stuff. And there would have been, just a lot easier on them both. But yeah, I'm definitely interested to see where all these little threads go in the novella and then in Boundless. So I'm going to go ahead and start working on those and report back. I finished Radiant, and this is the only novella in the series, and this takes place again right after Hallowed. It just picks right up, and in this story we switch between Angela and Claire's point of view. And honestly, I didn't like the novella as much as I did the novels. I felt like there was a lot more focus on the romance and the kind of, woe is me, the boy doesn't like me, I had to break up with the boy, and a lot less focus on the angelic stuff. And I also felt like it was pretty obvious that Fen is going to wind up being bad. And it just seemed completely and totally obvious to me. I'm definitely interested to see where this goes in Boundless, and I really hope we get some answers, because I feel like there's a lot of stuff that's been hinted at throughout the first two novels and this novella that just hasn't been answered. So I will definitely be on to the third book and report back. Boundless is the final book in the trilogy, and even though I read it in one day, I have to say this was probably the weakest out of all of the books. Although I did feel like in all of them there was kind of a lot of filler. I kind of enjoyed the filler in some of the other ones a little more than I did here. Here I was just kind of like waiting for the plot to progress, and instead it really didn't. It was just kind of the day-to-day stuff. I will say the action felt a little more immediate when we finally got there, the last 75 pages or so. And I'm definitely not a fan of how the love triangle was dealt with. And I felt like there was no really good reason given for what happened. And yeah, that upset me a little bit. And I also felt like some of the stuff was just kind of, oh, done. And it was made such a big deal of earlier on in either the book or the series that's kind of like, okay, that's it. After all this build-up, it's just, oh, I did it. And so while I didn't completely dislike this series, it definitely kind of hits some of the same roadblocks as other YAs do. Now, despite the fact that in the first two books I didn't really mind the love triangle, I thought it was done relatively well. In this particular book, I did not feel like it was done well. I felt like it was kind of dragged out to be really angusty, and yeah. And like in the second book, we again have some bigger deals going on, and instead the love triangle is the most important thing. And I just feel like that's very unrealistic. And I will say though, if you like the idea of angels and Angel Bloods, Nephilim, this is a pretty good series. It is better than some of the other ones I've read for sure. And I did really enjoy the first book, and I did enjoy the second book, although a little bit less. And this book I did enjoy, even though it was even less than the other two books. So if you do pick this up, I hope you let me know what you think of it. And as always, like and subscribe, and I will see you all in my next video.